I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And now to the news. First, in the Philippines, Malacanang has dismissed overall Deputy Ombudsman Melchor Arthur Carandang from service after he was found liable for graft and corruption and betrayal of public trust. Executive Secretary Salvador Medaldea signed the dismissal order, which was released to palace reporters on Wednesday, more than 10 months after Carandang alleged that President Duterte and his family have accumulated ill-gotten wealth amounting to billions of pesos. The Office of the President, in an order dated July 30 but made public on Wednesday, said that it found Carandang liable for graft and corruption and betrayal of public trust. The case stemmed from complaints filed by lawyer Manuelito Luna and suspended lawyer Elio Malyari in October last year. The two accused Carandang of corruption for causing undue injury to any party, including the government, as well as for giving unwarranted benefits through manifest partiality and for divulging valuable information of a confidential character. The complaint involved Carandang media interview, where he was quoted as saying that his office had already received the bank transaction record of the president's family from 2006 to 2016 from the Anti-Money Laundering Council, a statement that was later denied by the money laundering watchdog. Carandang on October 3 maintained that his office has observed confidentiality in the probe into President Duterte and his family's bank transactions. The Department of Justice is currently coordinating with its American counterpart regarding the charges against alleged pork barrel scam mastermind Janet Lim Napoles and her 5 family members, who allegedly conspired to illegally transmit Philippine government funds worth $20 million to the U.S. The U.S. Department of Justice said Tuesday that Janet Napoles and the 5 other defendants allegedly diverted Philippine government funds intended to benefit poor Filipinos. Prosecutors say the money was used to purchase assets in the U.S., including property and luxury vehicles. Napoles and the others are charged with money laundering and conspiracy. Officials are working to have the defendants extradited to the U.S. from the Philippines. The others named in the indictment are John Napoles, James Napoles, John Napoles or Jean, Reynald Lim, and Ana Lim. Janet Napoles is facing a string of plunder of raps in the Sandigan Bayan Anti-Graft Court. She's also believed to be the brains behind the multi-billion peso pork barrel scam involving the Priority Development Assistance Fund allocations. Meanwhile, a U.S. gun rights activist and entrepreneur vowed to fight attempts to block his free publication of blueprints for 3D printed firearms. Cody Wilson, a self-proclaimed crypto-anarchist and gun rights advocate, has made available for download open-source digital files for making so-called ghost guns. His website, DefCAD, went live ahead one day early on Tuesday as uproar mounted over a settlement he made with the federal government that allowed him to publish, and numerous states resorted to 11th-hour legal action. To Wilson says he's facing legal action from at least 21 state attorney generals who have cited the risk to public safety, but insists he will not back down. Wilson also said the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment, which guarantees the right to bear arms, should extend to a person's right to make their own guns. 8 Democratic attorney generals filed a lawsuit Monday seeking to block the federal government settlement with a company that makes the plans available online. They also sought a restraining order, arguing the 3D guns would be a safety risk. The U.S. District Judge Robert Lasnik issued the order Tuesday afternoon, saying there's a possibility of irreparable harm because of the way these guns can be made. An Aeromexico flight crashed on takeoff during a heavy hailstorm in northern Mexico, engulfing the plane in flames and injuring 97 people, according to officials. The Embraer 190 aircraft, which was operating between Durango and Mexico City and crashed around 3 p.m. local time, was carrying 88 adults, 9 minors, 2 infants, 2 pilots and 2 flight attendants, according to the airline's Director General Andres Conesa. The accident did cause 2 serious injuries. A pilot had to undergo a spinal operation, and a young girl suffered burns on 25% of her body, according to the governor. But the good news is no fatality. A total of 97 people were admitted for treatment following the crash, most of them very light injuries, according to Durango Civil Defense spokesman Alejandro Cardoza. Cardoza also said the plane was caught in a heavy hailstorm, and the pilots tried to make an emergency landing, after which the fire broke out. In other news, Facebook removed accounts that it says are part of a coordinated political influence campaign uncovered ahead of midterms. Facebook said it shut down 32 fake pages and accounts involved in an apparent coordinated effort to stoke hot-button issues ahead of November midterm U.S. elections, but could not identify the source, although Russia is suspected of involvement. It said the, quote, bad actors went to far greater lengths to cover their tracks than the Russian-based Internet Research Agency, or IRA, had in the past, according to Facebook. This included using virtual private networks, or VPNs, to hide their location and using third parties to run ads on their behalf. Furthermore, the social network said it had not found evidence of Russian IP or Internet protocol addresses. The U.S. intelligence community has concluded that Russia sought to sway the vote in President Trump's favor, and Facebook was a primary tool in that effort, using targeted ads to escalate political tensions and push divisive online content. Trump, now president, has repeatedly downplayed Kremlin efforts to interfere in U.S. democracy and the presidential campaign. Meanwhile, U.S. Senators Graham and Shaheen reacted to the news that Facebook has shut down more than 30 fake pages and accounts. Take a listen.
But the goal for me is to stop Russian intervention in our electoral system and undermining democracy in general. We have not achieved that goal. What we're doing today is clearly not working. So if I were the president, I would get behind an effort, bipartisan effort in Congress, to send a message to Russia that the more you do, the more we're going to do. The only thing Putin understands is strength, and we're going to look weak in the eyes of Putin if we don't up our game.
We know that it's not just about hacking into electoral systems and state registration systems. It's also about sowing divisions within the country among politicians and among average citizens. So I think it's not surprising. We should have been expecting this, and that's why we need to work together to address it.
The UN Refugee Agency, or UNHCR, called for international solidarity and support for countries hosting Nicaraguan refugees and asylum seekers as thousands flee mounting political tensions and violence there. UNHCR said that in recent months, the number of asylum applications by Nicaraguans in neighboring Costa Rica and other countries has increased exponentially. Around 300 protesters have been killed and many injured following 3 months of anti-government demonstrations, which have been violently suppressed by police and pro-government militias. Nearly 8,000 asylum claims by Nicaraguan nationals have been registered in Costa Rica since April, and some 15,000 more have been given appointments for a later date, as national processing capacities have been overwhelmed. Panama, Mexico, and the United States have also recorded growing claims by Nicaraguans.
According to Costa Rican authorities, nearly 8,000 asylum claims by Nicaraguan nationals have been registered since April, and some 15,000 more have been given appointments for later registration, as the national processing capacities have been overwhelmed. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is calling for international solidarity and support for Costa Rica and other countries hosting Nicaraguan refugees and asylum seekers, as thousands of Nicaraguans flee mounting political tensions, violence, and serious human rights violations in their country. We are also strengthening our presence in Costa Rica's northern border region, and together with the Costa Rican government, other UN agencies, and our NGO partners, are gearing up our response capacity to provide immediate protection and assistance to thousands of Nicaraguan refugees and asylum seekers, both in the northern region and in the metropolitan area of the capital, San Jose.
Nicaragua's unrest began on April 18 with protests against a pension reform plan, which has since been dropped. But violent repression has led opposition anger to mushroom into a broad campaign against the president, Daniel Ortega, and his wife, Vice President Rosario Murillo. Protesters have demanded Ortega's resignation and early elections, but the embattled president has said he will not bring polls scheduled for 2021 forward. On Monday, he also rejected the idea of calling a referendum on whether to hold an early election. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said that his ruling party would seek to change the constitution to speed up redistribution of land to the country's poor black majority. Much of the most productive land in South Africa is still owned by white people 24 years after the end of apartheid, which systematically disenfranchised black people. White farmers control 73% of arable areas, and it's widely understood to be that land which could be forcibly seized and transferred to the previously disadvantaged. The lingering pace of land reform has caused anger in the country since the end of the apartheid era. Until now, the government has pursued a policy of willing buyer, willing seller to enable land transfer. To other news now, the Department of Foreign Affairs in the Philippines gave loyalty awards at the Philippine Embassy in Moscow. Amy Coloma has this report.
In a simple ceremony at the Philippine Embassy in Moscow, Philippine Ambassador to Russia presented loyalty certificates and pins to its 3 personnel in recognition of the long service they have rendered to the embassy and to the Department of Foreign Affairs. One of the awardees is Miss Eden La Forteza Salting, who's been serving the embassy for 20 years as FSSE-1 Attaché Property Officer.
20 taon na po akong nagtatrabaho sa departamento to at ako'y talagang magtrabaho dito sa embahada sa Moscow, Russia. Ang masasabi ko lang, sa 20 taon ng aking serbisyo ay sadyang masaya, makulay at puno-puno ng challenging. Pero masasabi kong may pagmamalaki ko ang taon kong serbisyo sa gobyerno, lalo na sa embahadang ito.
Another local hire, Ms. Cherry Narvaez, has been serving the embassy as FSSE-1 Attaché Assistant Political for 20 years.
I celebrated my 20 years in the Department of Foreign Affairs ngayong taon na to. So, bali, matanda na ako. Pero sa 20 years na yun, madami na din na experience at mga tulong na nagawa sa mga kababayan natin na sakop ng Russia. Masaya na malungkot, masaya pag nakakatulong kami at nagagawa namin ang paraan ng mga pangangailangan ng mga kababayan natin. Pero malungkot din pag may mga bagay din naman kasi na hindi namin kayang gawa ng paraan. Kumbaga, limitado din kakayahan namin na makatulong. Pero hanggat maaari, hanggat kaya, tinutulungan natin. Sa ating mga kababayan, sa ating mga OFW, na kahit kami OFW din, magtiwala lang kayo sa embassy at gagawin namin yung aming makakaya, lahat ng aming makakaya para makatulong at mabigyan solusyon ang mga problema inyong kinakaharap. Kung kami man po ay may pagkukulang, hinihingi po namin ang inyong pasensya at pag-unawa. Salamat po.
Ms. Fima Kairmichu, who has been in the embassy for 15 years, is FSSO3 Attaché Finance Officer.
15 years na po dito sa Department of Foreign Affairs. Masasabi ko lang po na ang ating embahada, marami pong natutulungan ng mga kababayan natin, simula pa po dun sa unang bansang kung saan po ako na destino. Lahat po ng lumalapit na Pilipino, wala pong tinatanggihan, lalo na po sa mga repatriation. Lahat po yun ay ginugugulan ng Department of Foreign Affairs, lalo na po dito sa Philippine Embassy in Moscow.
It can be said that this is one good example wherein you can say that loyalty is very important to one's success. An employee must respect his duty of loyalty regardless of the industry he works in or position he has. Reporting from Moscow, Russia, this is Amy Coloma and I am one with 25.
All right, here is a greeting from the Philippine Ambassador of Russia to us. Take a look.
Mula dito po sa Philippine Embassy sa Moscow, maligayang bati po sa ating mga kaibigan sa Iglesia ni Cristo on the 104th anniversary of the Church. Maligayang bati rin sa inyo for 50 years in the West at sana po ay lalo pang lumawak ang inyong kasamahan. Maraming salamat po.
Eagle News International will be right back.
Health is our most important asset.
U.S. President Donald Trump is now considering a 25% tariff on $200 billion in Chinese imports rather than the 10% previously touted, according to reports on Tuesday. The U.S. imposed tariffs of 25% on $34 billion of Chinese products earlier this month, with plans to add another $16 billion of imports on Tuesday. Trump initially threatened to levy 10% on an additional $200 billion, but that figure may now rise to 25%, according to sources in a told to Washington Post and Bloomberg. It would represent a ramping up of pressure over Washington's trade standoff with Beijing. In Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said that blackmail and pressure from the U.S. side will never work on China. Pressed by poverty into work when he was 14, Trinh Van Cuyet now presides over a Vietnamese property empire and is betting billions on a new airline in Southeast Asia's crowded aviation sector. The 43-year-old tycoon clawed his way up from a tough start in the Vietnamese countryside, his modest aspiration back then to become a civil servant. He says he gave up his youth to get where he is today. From lowly beginnings, his first job was in his mother's shop. He now oversees the FLC Group empire that includes luxury resorts and golf courses, mining, and vocational training.
Và tôi trở thành một công chức nhà nước và có ổn định cuộc sống. Mười mấy tuổi chỉ suy nghĩ được như vậy. Và đi kiếm tiền cũng chỉ là để phục vụ đi học. Và chỉ để cho cái thích của mình là trở thành một công chức đó.
Born poor in Vinh Phuc province, he grew up playing in the shade of bamboo trees, whose memory has inspired the name for the carrier. He took his first flight at age 17 from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi, carrying CD players to sell at a time when war-scarred communist Vietnam was just starting to embrace market reforms. His company has a market capitalization of around $200 million, and he's branching out, taking a punt on Bamboo Airways, a new airline set for its maiden flight in October.
Thành phố và ngay nhà tôi ở quê cũng là những cây tre, những bụi tre mọc xung quanh ở miền quê nhà tôi, và từ cái hiểu cái đó và tôi yêu cây tre cũng như yêu đất nước, con người Việt Nam cũng rất là yêu cây tre như vậy, và chúng tôi quyết định đặt hãng hàng không mang thương hiệu là cây tre Việt.
Bamboo Airways will come up against heavyweights such as Air Asia and Thai Airways, as well as local players Vietnam Airlines and Vietjet. In other business news, Apple said that its profit had jumped to $11.5 billion in the recently ended quarter, besting market expectations despite selling fewer iPhones than analysts projected. Revenue in the quarter soared 70% to $53.3 billion from the same period a year earlier on the back of sales of iPhones, online services, and wearable devices. Analysts were eager for news about how the company is riding out trade turbulence between the U.S. and China. President Trump's trade wars include 25% U.S. tariffs on $34 billion in Chinese goods, with more on the way, and steep tariffs on steel and aluminum, which provoked Beijing and others to hit back with import duties on U.S. goods. Tim Cook said that Apple products have not so far been directly affected and that the company is evaluating the latest Trump move, currently in a public comment phase. In other news, a massive electricity blackout left half of Venezuela without power, causing traffic chaos in parts of Caracas and other cities. Power cuts are a regular occurrence in crisis-hit Venezuela, in particular in the rural interior. In the western oil-rich region of Zulia, electricity is rationed, with blackouts sometimes lasting up to 12 hours. Take a look.
Han avisado de varios paros y no sabemos si esto es algo causado por motivo del paro o alguna falla eléctrica. Totalmente un caos, de toda la avenida desbordada, las personas caminando, personas de la tercera edad que no tienen ningún medio de locomoción porque no hay ni siquiera el medio de transporte superficial, no funciona.
Dishing out burgers and fries slathered with melted cheese, one-way burger is like any other trendy food truck in Riyadh. Take a look. However, it offers something rare. The cook behind the sizzling hot grill is a Saudi in the once tax-free petro state, which long offered its citizens cradle-to-grave welfare. Blue-collar occupations such as cooking, cleaning, and working at gas stations have largely been the preserve of foreign workers who far outnumber Saudis. But Saudis are increasingly taking on such low status jobs in a new age of austerity when gas is no longer cheaper than water, with the government trimming oil-funded subsidies and tackling sluggish economic growth and high unemployment.
هناك توجه من قبل الشباب للدخول في معركة، وهو قبول العمل في مهن قد تكون مناسبة ولكن لا يرضى بها بالسابق، ولكن الحاجة وعدم رغبته أن يكون عاطل أو ثقيل على أسرته وعائلته جعل يقبل أن يعمل في محطات البنزين، سائق ليموزين، فود تراك. في ظل الطفرة الاقتصادية التي مرت بها المملكة خلال العقود الماضية جعل هناك ثقافة معينة، هو البحث عن وظيفة إدارية أو فنية في كبرى الشركات.
It remains unclear how many nationals have moved into blue-collar jobs, but the trend defies a popular maxim among Saudis. They, the expats, work for us. We don't work for us. Now, cultural attitudes to work are changing amid a major retooling of Saudi Arabia's lagging economy, with the country seeking to wean citizens off government largesse as it prepares for a post-oil era. Meanwhile, the government's push to replace foreigners with Saudi workers, a policy known as Saudization, as well as back-breaking expat levy, are driving a huge exodus of expats who hold 70% of all jobs. Officially, statistics show nearly 800,000 foreign workers have left the kingdom since the beginning of 2017, creating what business owners call a hiring crisis. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Health is our
Welcome back. Air tankers and helicopters have been deployed to fight wildfires in California. The Corp fire, the deadliest ongoing blaze, is now the 7th most destructive in state history. Meteorologists say the Corp blaze is so strong that it has created its own local weather system with errant winds. Take a look. Meanwhile, South Korea issued a nationwide heat wave warning. Take a look. The temperature in Seoul reached 38.8 degrees Celsius, the highest since 1907, when the country began to compile weather data. A heat wave warning has been issued nationwide by the government, asking people to be careful during outdoor activities and to drink plenty of water. The extreme weather is expected to continue for the rest of the week. An official said while several factors are behind the extreme heat wave this year, the main cause is the high atmospheric pressure from northern China and southern Mongolia, which has expanded to reinforce the North Pacific anti-cyclone. Meanwhile, foreign hikers recalled their terror when tons of rock cascaded down after strong quakes struck Indonesian tourist island Lombok. Major landslides were triggered on Mount Rinjani, blocking the hiking routes that crisscross it. The magnitude 6.4 earthquake left at least 16 people dead, injured hundreds of others, and displaced thousands. Take a look.
The moment that happened, I had my coffee in the morning, and then with my friend, and then suddenly the land just moving.
And then suddenly the mountain shakes. It shook really hard, so my guide got me, to hold onto the ground, and that the earthquake lasts for about 10-20 seconds, and after that everyone was rushing down. There was a couple of tourists who got trapped in the crack. Everyone was helpful. My guide was with me all the way through. I felt safe just being cared for by the guide.
The planet's largest colony of king penguins has declined by nearly 90% in 3 decades, alarmed researchers said on Monday. The last time scientists set foot on France's remote Île-aux-Cochons, roughly halfway between the tip of Africa and Antarctica, the island was blanketed by 2 million of the flightless birds, which stand about a meter or 3 feet tall. But recent satellite images and photos taken from helicopters show the population has collapsed, with barely 200,000 remaining, according to a study published in Antarctic Science. King penguins are homebodies. While adults will set to sea for days at a time foraging for food, the species does not migrate. Now, scientists said climate change may play a role. In 1997, a particularly strong El Niño weather event warmed the southern Indian Ocean, temporarily pushing the fish and squid on which king penguins depend south beyond their foraging range. El Niños are cyclical events or cyclical events that occur every 2 to 7 years, but they can be amplified by global warming, which itself produces many of the same results, albeit on a longer time scale. Around 78 million babies, or 3 in 5, are not breastfed within their first hour of life, putting them at higher risk of death and disease and making them less likely to continue breastfeeding, according to a report released by the World Health Organization and UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund. The report, released at the start of World Breastfeeding Week, found that breastfeeding rates within the first hour of birth are highest in Eastern and Southern Africa and lowest in East Asia and the Pacific. Nearly 9 in 10 babies born in Burundi, Sri Lanka, and Vanuatu are breastfed within the first hour. By contrast, this only happens for 2 in 10 babies born in Azerbaijan, Chad, and Montenegro.
It is important to start breastfeeding in the first hour of life because it helps to start breastfeeding correctly, and it also helps prevent babies from dying in the first month of life, and it helps to protect them against certain diseases.
The report also urges governments, donors, and other decision makers to adopt measures to restrict the marketing of infant formula and other breast milk substitutes.
Breastfeeding is best for babies all over the world. It is the best gift that mothers can give to their newborns and to their babies. Families who want to look at other options need to have access to unbiased information, and they need to be supported to provide these alternatives in a safe manner. To one extent, we see that a lot of cesarean sections are not necessary for medical reasons, so they are either too little, too late, or too much, too soon. So that is a trend that would need to be reversed. But also, if a cesarean section happens, then the staff that performs that cesarean section needs to be trained in how to support the mother and baby to breastfeed, because it is possible to do early initiation of breastfeeding after a cesarean section.
We'll take another short break. The news continues here on Eagle News International.
Appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork ng parents. Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan. Grabe, rated SPG, maselan.
Itan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
Sports, basketball great LeBron James on Tuesday accused the President Donald Trump of intensifying racial divisions in the United States. James said, "I believe our president is kind of trying to divide us," according to James in an interview. "He's kind of used sport to divide us, and that's something I can't relate to because I know that sport was the first time I ever was around someone white," James added. Trump has repeatedly criticized National Football League players who kneeled during the national anthem to protest racial injustice, a protest began by San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick in 2016. James, 33, has previously expressed solidarity with the kneeling players and voiced earlier criticism of Trump. James, who ranked 7th in career National Basketball Association scoring, will play with the Los Angeles Lakers next season after leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers. But he remains tied to Ohio, where on Monday an elementary school for the at-risk youngsters opened in his hometown of Akron through his LeBron James Family Foundation. James, wearing a gray suit and button-down shirt, said even the most successful African Americans face discriminatory attitudes. In Philippine sports, Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas or SBP President Al Panlilio said it has officially informed the Philippine Olympic Committee or POC about its decision not to send a team to the 2018 Asian Games. Unmoved by calls for the SBP to reconsider the pullout, Panlilio said it has already sent a formal advice to the POC about the basketball team's withdrawal from the Indonesia showpiece on Monday night. We have formally advised POC of the withdrawal last night, said Panlilio in an SMS message. Panlilio's statement came in light of calls made by several basketball stakeholders for the SBP to reconsider its decision. On Tuesday, Philippine Asian Games Chef de Mission Richard Gomez said the country can still send a basketball delegation since the POC has yet to officially inform Indonesia organizers about the withdrawal. Philippine basketball legend Robert Jaworski and Mon Fernandez have also expressed dismay over the SBP decision. The POC, according to Gomez, has until next Wednesday in the delegation registration meeting to formally inform the Indonesia Asian Games Organizing Committee about any changes to the SBP plans. Meanwhile, in tennis, three-time Grand Slam champion Stan Wawrinka, struggling in his comeback from left knee surgery, was ousted by US qualifier Donald Young at the ATP and WTA Washington Open on Tuesday. Young, ranked 234th, outlasted the 33-year-old Swiss 6-4, 6-7, 7-6 and advanced to a second-round match with Japanese 7th seed Kei Nishikori. Wawrinka, ranked 198, fell to 6-11 this year after missing most of the 9 months before returning in May. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez and I am 1 to 25.
Iglesia ni Cristo members or Church of Christ members in San Mateo commemorated the 104th anniversary of the church. Don Orozco for the details.
Members of the Iglesia ni Cristo are coming in from different parts of the United States and Canada, and today marks their Unity Games, which will be held here in Northwest California. And for us to do a sneak peek on whatever is happening, we will do first some interviews and check-in to some of the participants for the Iglesia ni Cristo's Unity Games here in continental USA.
Members of the Iglesia ni Cristo gathered in droves here in the San Mateo Performing Arts Center here in San Mateo, California. This is part of the Iglesia ni Cristo's 104th year anniversary and 50 years in the West. There were so many people who actually gathered and waited outside in participation and anticipation of the activities that will be conducted inside the venue. Even as they come in droves, what is noticeable is the orderly manner by which members of the Iglesia ni Cristo enter inside the San Mateo Performing Arts Center. Everyone was so excited to see members of the church from different congregations from all over the United States and Canada, including, of course, Alaska and Hawaii. There are, all in all, 17 districts that will be a part of these Continental Unity Games and is divided into 6 regions, namely, of course, the West Coast, East Coast, Canada 1, Canada 2, Pacific, and Midwest, all of which are vying to win the title for all the events at stake, which includes basketball, volleyball, boxing, bowling, and some other games, including board games like chess. Just like any other sports spectacle, everything was there, including the playing of the drums, and the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner. But what differentiates it is that before everything is being done, the members of the Iglesia ni Cristo conducted a worship service to God, which was led by one of their district minister, Brother June Pilon, district minister for the District of Northwest California. I had the opportunity to meet and talk to some of the athletes, and they all too are too excited to perform and show what they can do inside the hard court, and of course on all the aspects of the sports event. The Unity Games is going to be a 3-day spectacle which will be held in several cities around the Bay Area in California. The finals, which will be held on Friday, will have one venue, which is at the San Jose State University, the capital of Silicon Valley.
This is such an exciting day for members of the Iglesia ni Cristo or Church of Christ. They have gathered, athletes have gathered from all over US and Canada, including Hawaii and Alaska. So the proceedings were actually done, and they already did, they sang the national anthem, they actually did the oath-taking, and all the things that will actually entice all the participants to make sure that they win come Unity Games. Reporting live here in San Mateo Performing Arts Center, this is Don Orozco for Eagle News.
Thank you, Don, and that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always one with 25. Good night.